All right, data fans, get ready. We're diving deep today into becoming an AWS certified data engineer. No time to waste. We're going straight to the source.
Mm.
The AWS Certified Data Engineer Associate Exam Guide itself will break it down, no jargon, just pure gold for acing that exam A&D, getting ahead in data engineering, like having a seasoned pro right beside you.
That's what we're here for. No textbook stuff, just
Wow.
real-world insights. Think of it as a cheat sheet for the exam ANDA for building a killer career in data.
Love it. So this guide divides the exam into four main domains, like the four pillars of data engineering.
Absolutely. Think of it as the DNA of a data engineer. First up, the big one, data ingestion and transformation, a whopping 34% of the exam.
Okay, 34%. Got it.
Then we've got data store management, that's
Yeah.
26%, followed by data operations and support, clocking in at 22%, and finally data security and governance at 18%.
Percentages, check. But let's get real. In building, say, a music app, what do these domains actually mean?
Okay, imagine crafting that perfect music recommendation engine. Each domain is a stage in that process. Data ingestion and transformation, that's like gathering all your ingredients. User activity, song data, listening history, you're pulling it all in from different sources.
Gotcha. Laying the groundwork, getting that data flowing. What's next?
Data store management, you've got to choose the right storage for each data type. We're talking tons of data here. Some need to be accessed super quick, so maybe Amazon S3 for bulk storage and DynamoDB for those lightning-fast recommendations when you open the app.
So choosing the right tool from the data toolbox. I like it.
Exactly. You've built your pipelines, sorted out your storage. Now you need to keep things humming. Which brings us to
Let me guess. Data operations and support. Making sure those recommendations actually reach the user.
spot on. Monitoring system health, automating processes, putting out fires.
Yeah.
It's all about ensuring smooth sailing for the user and those sweet, sweet tunes.
Keeping the music playing. And finally, we've got data security and governance, more critical now than ever, right? Building it right, but also building it responsibly.
For sure. Think about it. Handling millions of users' listening histories, that's a lot of sensitive information. This domain's all about keeping that data safe, locked down, tight controlling access, implementing encryption, and making sure you're compliant. No data breaches on our watch.
It's like building a high-tech, data-driven music factory. This is cool. But hold the music for a sec. Let's break down data ingestion and transformation. The guide mentions theory and practical skills. Why both?
Because in data engineering, it's not enough to just know the concepts, you got to get your hands dirty.
Right, so it's not enough to just talk about data, gotta know how to wrangle it.
Exactly. You need to grasp throughput, how much data you can handle per second,
Like how much music we're streaming at once.
and latency, the time it takes for data to travel. But knowing the terms won't build a pipeline. You need the tools to put them into action.
Tools like
Amazon Kinesis. Think of it as a fire hose for real-time data, perfect for that music activity.
keeps things flowing.
Then there's S3, your reliable storage workhorse. Handles massive data without breaking the bank. And for processing, transforming AWS Glue is your go-to. It preps your data for analysis.
Ah, so it's like refining the raw materials before they hit the factory floor.
Exactly. And speaking of the factory floor, the guide dives into data pipelines. Any gotchas there, things you wish you knew when starting out.
Definitely. One thing most people miss is designing pipelines with replayability in mind. Imagine wanting to rewind that song, right?
Or replay that epic guitar solo.
Yeah. And
Definitely.
you need to be able to reprocess data from a specific point, maybe fix an error, or rerun an analysis.
So it's like having a data backup, but more specific. Precisely. And to do that, you need to understand stateless versus stateful processing. Serverless functions, for instance, are stateless. Each one's independent. But with pipelines, you often need to maintain state.
Give me an example.
Sure, let's say you're counting the total plays for a song. You got to remember the count from earlier data. That's stateful processing.
Okay, so it's more than just moving data around. It's about doing it reliably, efficiently.
Exactly.
Which brings us to Domain 2, data store management. I like how the guide makes it about choosing the right tool for the job.
And with AWS, you've got a whole arsenal of storage options. You've got your super scalable object storage like Amazon S3. We talked about that.
Right, great for those massive music files.
Exactly. Then you have analytical powerhouses like Amazon Redshift, a fully managed data warehouse perfect for complex queries.
So if I wanted to analyze listening patterns, see what's trending, Redshift's my go-to.
You got it. And for those super fast music recommendations, remember those? We use Amazon DynamoDB. It delivers millisecond response times.
Because nobody wants to wait for their music, especially when discovering a new track.
Absolutely. But choosing the right storage is just the beginning, right? We also need to think about data lifecycle management.
To be honest, I kind of skimmed over that part.
Think about your music library. You've got your favorites that you listen to all the time. Then there's that track you haven't heard in ages but can't quite delete. Data lifecycle management is like that.
So some data is hot, some is cold.
Exactly. You optimize by moving data around based on how it's accessed.
So just like I wouldn't keep my rarely played music on my expensive SSD.
You'd archive it. Save money, right? It's about finding the right balance between performance and cost efficiency.
Man, this is making me rethink my own music storage. But we've ingested the data, transformed it, stored it. What's next?
Well, the show must go on, which means making sure our data pipelines and systems are running smoothly. That's where data operations and support comes in. Time to put on our monitoring hats and make sure those recommendations are flowing.
Okay, so we've got the data flowing, the algorithm's humming, but let's be honest, even the best designed systems can hit a snag. That's where I imagine things could get a bit, shall we say, stressful.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Imagine waking up to find out your music recommendation engine has gone haywire, suggesting death metal to your grandma. That's where a solid understanding of data operations and support can save the day, and frankly, your sanity.
And I'm guessing the exam guide goes deep on this, right? What are some of the key things it emphasizes for keeping those data pipelines flowing smoothly?
Monitoring and automation are your best friends here. The guide spends a lot of time on services like Amazon CloudWatch, which is like having a dashboard for your entire data environment. You can track metrics, set alarms. It's like having a pulse on your entire system.
So if one of my recommendation algorithms starts acting up, CloudWatch is going to send me an alert.
Exactly. It's all about proactive monitoring so you can catch issues before they snowball. And then there's CloudTrail, which is your audit trail in the cloud. It logs every API call made to your AWS account.
Okay, so if something does go wrong, CloudTrail helps me retrace the steps and figure out what happened, who did what, and when.
Precisely. It's invaluable for both troubleshooting and security auditing.
Speaking of security, let's talk about the last domain, data security and governance. This feels especially crucial given the amount of user data we're dealing with in our hypothetical music platform.
Absolutely. Remember those millions of users we talked about, all those listening histories? That's incredibly sensitive information. This domain is all about making sure the data is locked down tight and that you're following best practices for access control, encryption, and compliance.
Right, because the last thing we want is to make headlines for all the wrong reasons. The guide seems to emphasize this principle of least privilege. Can you break that down for me?
It's a fundamental security principle. Imagine giving each person who works in your music platform the keys to the entire building, even if they only need access to one room. Yeah. That's a recipe for disaster. The principle of least privilege is about granting users and systems only the permissions they need to do their job and nothing more.
So it's about minimizing the potential damage if something goes wrong. No more master keys for everyone.
Exactly. It's about layers of protection. Think about how you'd protect your own music collection. You wouldn't just leave your phone unlocked with all your playlists open for anyone to access, would you? You'd have a lock screen, maybe even facial recognition for added security. It's the same concept with data security.
Makes sense. And speaking of protecting valuable assets, let's bring it back to our listeners. You've aced the AWS Certified Data Engineer exam. You've got the skills, you're security conscious. What does this all mean for your career trajectory?
You're holding a golden ticket in a highly competitive field. Data engineers are the architects of the modern data-driven world, and companies across every industry are clamoring for their expertise.
So this exam guide, it's not just about passing a test, it's about opening doors to some pretty incredible opportunities.
Absolutely. This is a field that's constantly evolving, which means there's always something new to learn. This guide is your launch pad. It gives you the foundational knowledge you need to jump in and start building your dream career in data engineering.
I love that. Okay, before we wrap up, I have to ask, I noticed something interesting in the guide's out of scope section. It explicitly states that this exam does not cover machine learning, which makes me wonder, with all this talk about data pipelines and algorithms, where does machine learning fit into the picture for a data engineer?
It's a question data engineers are grappling with more and more. While this particular exam doesn't dive deep into ML, it's becoming increasingly intertwined with data engineering in the real world. But that, my friend, is a conversation for another deep dive.
I'm already looking forward to it. A huge thank you to you, our data guru, for breaking down this essential guide with us. And to all you listeners, happy studying, and remember, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deeper.